Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Playmore69, aka Michael, and this is the All in All Podcast, episode 3. We're doing a little bit different for this episode. This is going to be a political episode with a lot of controversial topics, but I do have a special guest with us, someone other than me on the podcast, and this is John. He is a conservative, and I will obviously be the liberal for this podcast, so I'll just let John introduce himself as a conservative here. So, John, take it away.
Hey, I'm John. I'm the conservative side of this podcast. I'm 17 years old, so I know what it's like growing up as a young conservative in this life. We are talking about very controversial subjects, so if you don't want to talk about that, you can hop off the podcast. We're not going to be mad at you. Sorry I sound a little weird. I'm very sick right now, so just ignore that. Michael, you want to go ahead and start it away with our first topic?
Yeah, John, he's being a trooper. He's sick, but he really wanted to come on the podcast and talk about some topics, and I felt it was a good time to do so. I've been wanting to do a political episode for a while now on the podcast, but this is the first political episode, so we're going to be starting it off here with a little bit light, basically be doing sort of a mock interview with John, the young conservative. So basically, I wanted to start it off, John. What is it growing up like a young conservative in the United States today? What does that mean to you, and how has that happen?
To be honest, I do really feel like this is a big thing for me personally, because I grew up around a lot of liberal, a bunch of liberal black people. So I went to a black school. Okay. With more, white people were the minority at my school, and being a liberal, or being a conservative white person, going to a liberal school with a majority of black people, it was definitely pretty difficult for me, because I was always looked down on as a racist or a murderer, or I was a bad person for believing something different than what they believed in. But I don't know. You want to know more in detail?
Okay. I kind of just wanted to expand on that topic. So you grew up as a young conservative in a primarily black neighborhood, I'm presuming, in a black school. So where'd you exactly grow up at? What sort of state in the United States?
I grew up in Texas, of course.
Okay. What part of Texas?
A smaller town of Paris, Texas.
Okay. Are you a native from Paris, Texas?
No, I'm originally from Houston, Texas.
Okay. Is there any difference between Paris and Houston? Or?
There is a large population difference, and
well, I'm talking about political difference, conservative versus liberal.
It's more conservative here, but around the area that I lived in and the school that I went to was definitely more liberal and stuff.
Okay. So, growing up as a young conservative, you just felt kind of outcasted from the majority of people who were liberal, because I think, as you know, typically, at least in the United States, that the older people tend to be conservative, the younger people tend to be more liberal. I think the statistics for Gen Z is 75% of Gen Z are liberal and 25% are conservative, so it's definitely a big disparity there. So would you agree with that?
Yes, I do find that true.
Okay.
A lot of instances, at my school, I was treated pretty equal, and then as people slowly found out that I was more and more conservative, it was just me posting about supporting Trump, or supporting more conservative sides of aspects of things that happen in the world.
Okay.
I kind of just got more and more talked about, more and more looked down and stuff. So.
Okay. Let's expand on that topic. So you just mentioned Trump. Were you a Trump supporter?
Yes, I am a Trump supporter.
Still are?
Yes.
Okay.
I would say I'm more of a Trump supporter than most.
What do you like about Trump?
I don't know. I like that he kind of just have a will to get stuff done, and I like what he did for our economy. And yes, he did do a lot of bad things, and some people look down on him for not being able to shut his mouth sometimes, and I definitely can agree on things like that.
Do you think the positives outweigh the negatives of Trump?
I think...
As a president?
As a president, I do think so. I do think so. I have to agree.
Okay. So you're a Trump supporter, and then you also said, like, you grew up with conservative ideas. Like, what were these conservative ideas that you grew up with?
Um, I just grew up with like, I don't really know how to put it, to be honest, but I just grew up around more like Christian, more Christian, pro-gun, like not very pro-abortion.
So when you grew up, you're saying you grew up more traditional than most, like
Yeah.
kind of in a role based, like gender roles. You grew up in
Yeah.
that. Okay. So Trump supporter, Christian conservative, from Texas, pretty conservative. So I guess that leads me to my next question. Do you feel like the media nowadays is against you, the mainstream media?
Mm, okay, this is a very big like topic. Like for like I don't really know. For most people, it is. But a lot of people like on the I do think the media is against us because most news stations and most people in general get like the bad side of conservatives. Like we always get talked down on is like they never talk about the fact that like anything else about us other than like we're against like Black Lives Matter or like movements like that or things like race and like Christianity and that like we're pro against everything that has to do with liberals, but I definitely don't think that's true.
So with you talked about with the media. So when it comes to like them highlighting the bad sides of conservatives, what are like some good sides of conservatives that more people can get behind?
I mean, I don't really know. I guess like we're I don't know. It's very hard. I mean, I think we're very accepting and open and honest and we're not hateful people like and we're I don't know. It's weird to put. We're super nice and we all will accept you for you no matter who you are or what you've been through. And yes, we may not support what you believe in personally, but that definitely doesn't mean we're not going to love you and respect you and we're always going to see your side of the thing and try to put ourselves in your shoes, but I'm not really sure how to put it like the pros of what we believe in.
Okay, well, like one pro could be like your stance on guns. Do you think that that is a good thing that you are pro gun? Do you think like conservatives have that like in the correct?
I think some conservatives, yes, have it in the correct here. Definitely with like more of a, each person should be able to handle a gun and should be able to own their own gun to defend themselves. But I definitely don't think it should be like very open. I think it should be just a little bit more controlled, and I think it should be more personalized when you get a gun, and not as just like opened up. And if that kind of makes sense, like it should be a little bit harder to get guns. To be honest, I think it's very easy for people to get guns. Like, yes, there's a waiting fee, but everyone can wait to shoot somebody. It doesn't really matter.
So you think having a gun, like you said, everyone. I'm assuming you mean like mentally stable people.
Yes,
that
I think
okay.
like non-felons or like it should be
Okay.
like mentally stable people that aren't like people that are all there, I guess.
Productive members of society.
Yeah,
basically.
like yeah.
So you're not the type of conservative to say like even felons could have guns or anything. Like you're not that conservative, but you're.
I think it depends on the felon.
Okay.
But yes.
Okay.
Because like there's like armed robbery and armed murder,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's like
tax evasion.
yeah, there's like people
Exactly.
that like evaded like police or got enough speeding tickets to have a warrant, and then they got a felony for too many speeding tickets or going like 150 miles an hour and they got a felony for a speeding ticket. And that's how I think it should be more personalized to people
Mm-hmm.
and like their own like life.
Exactly. So you just touched on the topic of police. That's obviously a very highly debated topic, at least in America now, in the most recent years. Like, what is a conservative's kind of outlook on police nowadays?
I think the police are talked down on a lot nowadays, but I definitely think that we should have more respect for them because they do put their lives on the line. And, like, to put it in the best way, just because there's one racist cop or one bad apple in the bunch doesn't mean the whole dozen is going to be ruined. But because they do protect us and they do put their lives on the line every day. So yes, you may be mad because you got a speeding ticket, but if those people weren't there to give you the speeding ticket, everybody would be speeding, and everyone would be causing accidents, and everybody would just be doing crimes and everything, and it would be like anarchy if our police weren't there to protect us. So yes, some police may be racist, and some police may be like looked down on for what they believe in or who they are and their personality. But I definitely think as a whole the police are amazing, and I think that we should have more respect for those people that put their lives on the line for us.
Okay, that's a really succinct answer. I'm pretty sure most people could, get behind that when it comes to police actually enforcing the law, but in a, the right way of not abusing their power as police over people. So I'm guessing you would disagree with this, but there's obviously a hot button topic about defunding the police. So do you agree with that, or do you think there should be more funding to the police nowadays?
I do have a very simple term for this, and I have one sentence to define how I feel about this.
Okay.
And it's very simple, and it sounds kind of dumb, and it may offend some people, and they may be like, well, that's just one instance or something. But if someone shot your grandson,
mm-hmm.
who's gonna go find that killer, and who's gonna go either kill them lawfully, or who's gonna put them in jail, or who's gonna take care of that bad person in your life?
Mm-hmm.
Who's gonna get rid of the bad people in this world? If that just makes sense. Or and I definitely think without the police, without laws in general and people to enforce our laws in America, we wouldn't be as far as we are today. It would just be anarchy in the world,
exactly.
Almost as if the purge was real, except every day.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense, almost.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I think most people can get behind your police take when it comes to them enforcing the law in the right way, and with the funding, the necessary funding being there, and the necessary training being there, with them not abusing their power. I think everyone could get behind that, at least in America. I know that a lot of people have a lot of disdain for the police, but I think that it can be changed. So I really like that topic with police here, but I guess since we are on the police, we can get to another controversial topic we talked about before the podcast. But this topic is obviously something that you brought up, so we're going to talk about it.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah. So let's talk about George Floyd. So what is your kind of take on the George Floyd, and how do you want to kind of approach that topic?
This is a very, very controversial topic.
Yes, it is.
And this did start a big movement.
It did.
But part of me wants to feel bad for him, but part of me is a lot of people, I feel like they overlooked the past and who he actually was,
mm-hmm.
and why they did what they did. Now, before I say anything else, I do feel like this was a very horrible event, and I definitely think the police were in the wrong here, but I also feel like you can't judge every single police officer in the United States of America because of one officer. If you had one bad friend in the bunch, like with the apples, would you leave all your other friends that were friends with him? No, you wouldn't. That makes no sense. So yes, I think it's a very tragic event, and I am sorry for the family members of George Floyd, and I'm sorry for everything that happened to him and how he passed away, and I may rest his body in peace. But I definitely don't think he should be put up on a pedestal for being a criminal and doing crimes and then getting killed while being arrested.
Okay, so let's kind of explore that a little bit. So you said that he was a criminal, which he does have a criminal record in his past, but do you think a criminal in America, for instance, he did do some things that, I think he was considered a felon, but can he be a quote-unquote good person even after receiving that felon?
Yeah, I think he can be a good person.
So then why, him being, basically being a big part of the Black Lives Matter, community? What exactly is wrong with that if you're saying he could be a good person but then he's a part of that Black Lives Matter community after he died, obviously. So, like, how do you really how do you see that? Like, where's the problem there?
Like, what do you mean? Where's the problem in why he's like such a big leader in Black Lives Matter?
He became, you said, like he was put on a pedestal.
Oh yeah.
So like, what's wrong with that inherently?
I just don't think he was put on the pedestal for the right reasons. I feel like if he was shown and done acts of kindness and shown that black people can, like, that like black people aren't like just a stereotype, like
they're equal like every
yeah,
other
like
American.
I feel like he could have shown that like they're equal and that they can do things and that they can like be a productive member of society and like even be overproductive in our society and like even outshow some of the people that like maybe thought that he was just gonna be another black person because he had a criminal record. But I definitely think he was put on a pedestal in the wrong way.
Yeah.
I feel like he should have been put up there on good terms and not just him being killed.
Okay. So I guess that leads us into our next topic when we talk about like BLM. So like obviously that is the movement really picked up a lot after George Floyd's death, and I know conservatives have a lot of words when it comes to BLM. So like I guess how would you approach that topic as well when it comes to like BLM and what they do and what they're trying to do?
Okay, this is my most conservative side of me is probably about to come out. So I'm sorry if I say anything that offends you. It's a podcast. This is my opinion, so you don't have to believe what I believe.
This is the All in All podcast. We talk about all topics, and if I have guests on here that have different opinions, that's cool because that means we have a difference of opinion. So
yeah, that's how we gotta do it. You gotta explore your own opinions to see who you are. But with Black Lives Matter, I definitely think like in the beginning, I'm unsure. I definitely think in the beginning before George Floyd and before it kicked off, I definitely think it was more of a movement to show equality. It wasn't just nowadays, especially, and like pretty much with everybody, but especially in the Black Lives Matter movement, I definitely feel like black people in the Black Lives Matter movement have just kind of have a feeling of like just like an attitude of just like have pity on me because I'm black and I'm being oppressed, and oh, because I'm black the police hate me, and because I'm black I don't get a job, and because I'm black because of this. And it's like I could say the same things about being white, except like sometimes you just gotta like get off your butt and go do something about it. Like,
so do you agree with like the old American kind of saying like pull yourself up by your bootstraps? No matter what situation you're in, you just have to play your cards right.
I think that's how it is. But with the Black Lives Matter movement and everything, like, yes, I have respect for those people. I have respect for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But with what they did by, like, protesting, I think they protested it in the wrong way. They should have protested it with love and kindness and shown that even though people are supposedly, like, violent or whatever, I feel like they should have shown love and kindness and spread equality throughout their movement, and not just, like, they pretty much protested and had a massacre and burned buildings and they shown violence through their movement, which kind of ruined their whole movement in my opinion.
So we can also talk about this as well. So like just what you said about like the media talking about conservatives in a wrong way of showing the bad conservatives, of showing like a few bad apples and it spoiling the whole bunch. Don't you think that there's people in the BLM community that are the bad apples that did do those riots and stuff, but there's also the people that, you know, do want to spread equality by peaceful protesting?
I do think that is very true. I think that's like you hit the nail on the head right there, to be honest with me.
Yeah. So would that change your opinion on BLM as like a whole? Like, okay, I know what they're doing, I know what they're trying to do, but they might be like, they might do some bad things, but it doesn't mean all of them are bad.
Yeah, I definitely don't think all of them are bad, but I definitely think that like most of them, like I think, trying to think of a way to put
Do you think
this.
it's a majority?
I think it's I think it's more than less of the have pity and like feel bad for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think the way and the reason that they made it is good, but I don't think they're actually following out what they said.
Okay.
I don't think they're following out the how do I put this?
The mission they're trying to accomplish.
I guess they didn't really follow out like the reasons, and they never actually did the whole reason they made their movement. They never showed that like black people are supposed to be equal, and they never showed that like just because you're black doesn't mean you're a bad person, or you're like ghetto, or you're a drug dealer or something. They kind of put on a big old fiad, I guess. Isn't that, you can put that word, I guess, there?
Mm-hmm.
Like they put on a big old, like they massacred their own movement by the protests, which, yes, there are good people in their movement,
Mm-hmm.
but by doing something such a violent act in their movement, it kind of ruined their whole entire,
Okay.
their whole thing and what was next to come in their movement.
Gotcha. So, okay, I can see how the conservatives, I guess, see BLM now. And I think that moves us into our next topic, which is, I guess, probably one of the most controversial, which is abortion. Now, I guess a disclaimer for the podcast, we are two males talking about abortion, so again, take our opinions with a grain of salt.
And I feel like also...
So, I guess you can go in with your take.
Can I say something about this real quick?
Yes, of course.
Like you said, this is all opinions. And
yeah, these are all opinions.
Just because we're men and we don't have babies doesn't mean that we can't have an opinion on this topic, because it takes two to have a baby. That's that man's child as much as the women's, even though they don't go through the pain. But disclaimer, we're dudes.
Yeah.
And it's a very controversial thing.
So, do you want me to give you my take beforehand, or do you want to go? Okay.
Yeah.
So, I guess from the more liberal standpoint when it comes to abortion, I believe it should be available to all women. I think it is something that should be a right. You know, if they get pregnant and they want to have an abortion, then I think that they can have an abortion. I think there should be a cutoff time. You know, I don't think abortion should happen at 8 or 9 months. Usually for most abortions it's in the first or second trimester. I think that's like 95% of abortions are done at that time, and I think that is when an abortion should be done. And also I advocate for getting an abortion as soon as they want, because I think waiting only prolongs the pain afterwards, because like once you wait too long, you could have emotional probably trauma afterwards, and that has been shown. So I guess just from my liberal standpoint is that I believe abortion should be available to all women, and if they want to get an abortion, then I definitely think they should. But I think there should be a cutoff time after the third trimester of like, hey, if you wait until your 7th month of pregnancy, you probably don't want to get the abortion that bad. But that's just how I see it. So what's the conservative take here?
Oh, okay. I liked what you said about doing it as fast as you should, or as fast as you can.
Yes.
And I definitely think that it is very controversial, and it's very touchy, because a lot of people out there can't have children, so they would have a lot different view and opinion.
Of course.
Because some people can't have children, and then there's some people that are just like pretty much killing. I'm not saying murdering. I'm just saying killing babies or infants, whatever you want, fetuses in the womb. So I definitely think that's a big thing. But
so like what's your take on like actually getting an abortion though? So like for women.
So my opinion is I definitely think that it's gonna take me a second to explain this, but I think it shouldn't be used as a form of birth control.
Okay.
So I think if you don't use protection and you don't use a Plan B and you don't have
condom
protection or whatever in any way,
okay,
I don't think you should get an abortion. I think that's wrong in general.
So do you think there's really no way to like know if they actually use protection during sex?
Yeah,
so it's really just
saying,
it's word of mouth.
That's just random. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just your moral belief. But yeah,
and I definitely think it is completely fine if a woman has been sexually assaulted via rape, by family member or not, because I know that's a big thing.
So, let me just get this straight. So, if a woman does get raped, she can have an abortion.
Yeah, I think it's
no
fine.
questions asked.
Yeah, but I definitely think that, like in general, other than that, those are kind of like those are very touchy, like random.
Well, they're also more rare when it comes to abortions.
They're very slim.
Also, I guess, so we got over this. You said that women that do get raped, that you would agree that abortion is okay then. So what about incest? So what if, like, a brother and a sister have, like, teenage sex and then the sister gets pregnant? Like, do you think an abortion should happen there? Because, obviously with incest you have certain birth defects that really could happen and mess up the baby. So do you think that abortion should be available in that case?
This is kind of weird to talk about, I'm not gonna lie.
It's a rare subject,
but
I'm just trying to kind of attack the conservative abortion point, because it's like there are many cases that you can think about, like, rape, incest, you can think about the woman just being underage, and you can think about all of those things, and those add up, so that's really what I'm trying to get at. So incest, what's your take on that?
On incest, honestly, it could go either way, because...
Well, normally they have birth defects, so it would be really bad if the baby was born.
Yeah, I think because, like, it's two people having sex, but at the same time they're family members, so it definitely makes it weird, and it could be bad for the baby.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I haven't really thought about incest that much personally, but I do think it's okay.
Okay.
Because if it's bad for the baby, and if that baby can, like, if it's statistically proven that baby will grow up with a birth defect, like autism or no arm or no ear or something, or something crazy, I think
physically
it's okay.
or mental,
But in general, I think by, like, people, like, I just don't think it's okay, and not random or very rare circumstances. I definitely think it's not okay. But that's just me morally. I'm not telling you how to believe. I think that's just me morally. I think it's not okay to get rid of a child from this earth just because you don't feel like raising it.
Okay, so I guess let me ask one more kind of like situation case is like, okay, let's say if the baby was going to maybe compromise the mother's health. So let's say the doctors knew that, like, hey, the mother's health is going to be compromised. Would the abortion be okay then?
Yes, I definitely think that's okay, because if you are hurting an innocent life that's, like, already alive, and if you're hurting a productive member of society, like, to put it statistically, if you're going to hurt somebody to have a newborn baby that may or may not come out alive, and you may kill somebody over this baby coming out alive or not, I definitely think it is okay for the child to be removed or aborted. Or
so I guess let me ask this other question too.
Like
so
the age of
the age of the woman. So let's say if she is underage, has consensual sex though, but does an abortion, is that quantified? Does that work in that situation as well?
Do you mean, like, if she can pass away as a young, like...
I'm just saying if she has sex, but she's underage, so she's below the age of consent. But she consents to sex.
No, I don't think it's okay still.
Okay.
I think because coming from a 17-year-old, I'm on a podcast talking about this maturely.
Yeah.
If you can consensually have sex, and you know what you're doing, and you know that like what happens after you have sex is you have a baby, I still think it's wrong, because you know morally, and you know in your head, if I have sex, this baby, I'm gonna have a baby. Like, if I don't use protection, or even if you do, it is still an outcome. Yeah.
So let's, I guess, get to the main part of abortion, which is 99% of cases. It's just normal, everyday couples that, obviously the woman gets pregnant, she wants an abortion. So, like, is there a cutoff time for you, like 6 weeks or whatever, when the baby is just like a peanut in the womb? Or are you just totally against it there's no sort of like cutoff period for you if it's just a normal couple getting pregnant like that. So
I think there is like an age. Well, I don't know like the exact age that it happens at personally because
the weeks.
Yeah, the trimester. I don't know the trimester, but I think if the baby has like, I think if the baby has a heart or what if it has brain activity and it has a heart.
Okay.
And like most of it's, I think it's like.
So you're saying that. I
think it's brain activity and a heart.
Yeah.
I think that is when I think the period should be cut off.
So that's when it should be cut off.
I think that's too far.
Which that's anywhere from around 6 to 12 weeks when you start detecting those things, or both of those. So like, you know, obviously how the Texas abortion law is set up now, that no woman can have an abortion after 6 weeks unless they, if they do, they could be almost bounty hunted in a way, and someone could take them to court and win $10,000 off the case if they find that a woman was getting an abortion at like 7 weeks or whatever. So I guess that's our abortion topic, and I think do you have anything else to add?
But also like with that kind of thing in the weeks, I definitely feel like some people don't find out they're pregnant until 7 or 8 weeks.
Yeah, that's entirely possible.
I think if you like find out at like 1 month or 2 months, I think it is okay to still like get rid of the baby because how would you possibly know that the baby was in there? But it's not one of those like the baby could come out of your womb or like your vagina and it could live a normal life after that.
Yes.
Like I think that's morally wrong, and I just think that's wrong in my opinion. Like,
okay. I mean, that's definitely more liberal, conservative abortion that I've heard, because I've talked to conservatives before, and a lot of conservatives seem to have this belief that like no abortion in any case whatsoever, like even in rape or incest, like you can't have an abortion whatsoever. They just totally want to abolish it. But I definitely like that you're a little bit more liberal in that sense, that like, okay, it can be necessary in some cases, but in most cases you just wouldn't agree with it.
Yeah, I think it's one of those very like, it depends on every
case to case basis,
situation.
basically.
Yeah, because it's very touchy subject.
Definitely.
And it also matters like what situation it happened in, because some people, like from one case it could be they were just playing around having sex and they knew they didn't have protection but they had sex anyway, and he didn't pull out fast enough. I think that's morally wrong.
Yeah.
But if a woman is raped by her uncle and she's a 16-year-old, I think that is definitely way, way different.
It's justified of having an abortion.
It's justified, and I think that it's a mature thing to do to get rid of that baby, because if that baby grew up bad because she decided to have that baby and not get an abortion, I think that makes sense.
So that covers our abortion topic. I think that was a really good discussion. I guess let's get into another topic here, and this topic is about the times changing. So obviously we're in 2021, almost 2022, and there's been a lot of social changes, at least in the United States today. Obviously, me and you have seen it as in the Gen Z group, and I guess where do you see like the times changing go? Do you see it going to a positive? Do you see it going to a negative? Like, where do you see that trending?
This is gonna be the most fun one to talk about.
Okay, that's great.
A lot of people are gonna get pissed off probably.
Maybe, we don't know.
We never know. But I definitely think it's going for the bad, personally.
Could you give us some examples?
Just I don't even know of an example. Just
okay,
like,
I'll give you.
Just like
I can give you some examples. So, I guess like from the conservative sense, we were talking before the podcast, obviously, and you were talking about like identity politics and about like, you know, about the color of your skin or your sexuality is just so much part of your identity that it defines you as a person, and you disagree with that.
Oh,
so
yeah. I remember
do you think
that
that is something that is a negative going, like currently as we?
Yeah, I feel like nowadays people they kind of get their identity off the color of their skin, and I definitely think that's a big problem in my opinion, because personally, I don't know if this has much to do with what we're talking, the topic that was originally brought up.
We can branch out.
But I've grown up around a lot of this is mainly to do with black people, I guess. I've been around,
Mm-hmm.
but I've grown up around a lot of like ghetto black people
Mm-hmm.
that like kind of defined and like they kind of made who they are off the color of their skin,
Mm-hmm.
and they kind of were like, have pity on me because I'm black, and but then like have pity on me because the police hate me, but then like go do drugs and then go steal something from Walmart. Like, I'm not saying I haven't done those things, but it's
Yeah.
like they kind of like put it on themselves as like a person, that like their skin color chose who they were gonna be and how they were gonna act. But like I've also been around of like a lot of country black. I'm personally country. I've been around a lot of country black people that have never felt that way. That the color of their skin makes them different than anybody else, or makes them feel like they should have pity on them because of the color of their skin, and because of how they grew up in the world.
Okay, so I think what I'm getting from that is like you just don't like people playing the victim, basically. Like, I think that you, like most conservatives, are under or believe in the ideology that, you know, everyone gets dealt a different set of cards in their life, and it's really just their kind of opportunity in life and their options in life how to play with those specific cards, of like how they play them. So would you agree with kind of that?
Yes.
Okay. So when it comes to, you know, your different set of cards in life, or privileges, advantages, disadvantages, whatever those might be, do you think that black people have a sort of argument when it comes to they have much more disadvantages than you as a white person?
That also has to do with the social times nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely feel like nowadays, they do have a little bit less, but it also depends on.
Does
like,
does it depend on like where they
depends,
grow up at?
Yes, I definitely think it depends on who they grow up at, but I definitely also think it's more of their attitude and how they act and how they present themselves in society.
I agree.
Because a lot of people are like, well, he pulled me over because I'm black, and blah blah blah. He gave me a ticket because I'm black, and oh, he did this because I'm black, and it's like, that is not the case. When
Mm-hmm.
that police officer pulls you over and he sees through your windshield, he cannot see you're black,
Mm-hmm.
or he cannot see you're black through the back of your window when you don't change signals, or when you're going 20 miles over the speed limit.
Mm-hmm.
He cannot see that you're black. He doesn't see your race. He sees, oh, that person is doing this wrong, or oh, that person is doing this wrong. Like, I've been pulled over many a times for doing a lot of dumb stuff.
Yeah.
And I never thought I was being pulled over because I'm white. And I've also been pulled over with a black driver, and I never thought that person was pulled over because they were black.
Okay, so obviously the times are changing. They're changing, in your opinion, for the worse, because people are becoming
I think
more...
they're more. This is a very, like, crude term, I guess you could put it.
Okay.
But I definitely think people nowadays are more like snowflakes, and they can't handle, like, the truth about what's going on, and they always kind of have to make it like it's, oh my gosh, it's so bad for me, but like, it's really not that bad. And I definitely feel like people nowadays cannot handle like the truth,
Mm-hmm.
like about like like anything really. Like, some people can't handle like, well, he didn't pull you over because you're not black, or like,
Yeah.
you aren't, like, your AC didn't go off because you're this or something, or just
Yeah.
random stuff. I don't know.
So, as a conservative, like, what questions do you have for the other side, meaning the liberal side? And obviously I'm a liberal, so I guess I could answer some of those questions, and we could maybe become like to some sort of agreement on some topics. So like, what are some questions that you might have for me when it comes to like what I believe in as a liberal and you as a conservative?
I don't know. I've talked to you about a lot of things because we do personally know each other.
Yeah.
And we always like to talk about these things.
Of course.
But I'm trying to think of one. Like, since I know you talked about me being a Trump supporter.
Yeah.
What is your views on President Joe Biden?
Okay. Um, well, I guess to cover the Trump first is that, I personally, I didn't really like either of the 2016 candidates, so it was Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, which I think are the two worst candidates we ever had. It was really just pick your poison, and I think that Trump did some good things while he was in office. I can agree that the economy was stimulated properly, and before COVID hit, I think he was doing really good economy wise. But I think in all other aspects, when it comes to socially, he was pissing off a lot of people, and I don't think he held together. I think he really created the divide between Democrats and Republicans, and he pushed that line even further. So it was much harder for me as a liberal and a Democrat voter to even like support him when he does good things. So moving on to Joe Biden now, I think Joe Biden is good president so far, at least in my opinion. I think he's done some not so correct things.
May I bring up?
I'm getting to that. So when it comes to Joe Biden, like I really like his infrastructure bill. That's great. Obviously to be a successful nation, country, whatever, you have to have good infrastructure. And I think that money is being well spent when it comes to the infrastructure bill. So I really like that that's a big initiative. Another initiative is obviously COVID he's doing. So like really pushing the vaccines. I think he is pushing them quite hard. I think it was at the start that the vaccines were kind of just optional, but now they've become more just necessary with every company that you're kind of part of now, which the conservatives don't really like, but the liberals, at least that I've talked to, are completely fine with and completely go with. And obviously Joe Biden, he has his faults, which are, being quite heavy. He has quite heavy dementia. He doesn't seem to know where he is all the time. And obviously his pullout in Afghanistan wasn't the best, but it obviously could have been worse. So that's really my opinions on Joe Biden for now. And obviously we still have a lot of Joe Biden left. He's not leaving until 2024, so we still got 3 years of him.
Yeah, I don't know. With Joe Biden, I definitely think this is it's a very controversial topic. This is like the most controversial in my opinion.
Okay.
Like in 2021 at least, because a lot of people are hearing bad and good things about him. But I definitely think he could be a good president. But so far, I definitely think he's ruined it with a lot of serious things. Mm-hmm. Like the Afghanistan pullout, a lot of people, especially like, I don't know why I have a very very big respect for our military members. Mm-hmm. So I definitely think that a lot of people started to get riled up over the 13 soldiers that lost their lives. Yep. I definitely think that was a big thing for me that kind of took me over the edge. That was that whole Afghanistan thing was kind of like a big turn off for me of Joe mm-hmm. Biden. And I didn't support him in the beginning, but like I said, I always do try to see the other party's side and try to put myself in their shoes and see what they actually believe in. But and also with the vaccine, I definitely think that is a big thing for me. I definitely think people shouldn't be forced to take a vaccine because it has to do with their body. I don't think COVID is, I don't know how to put this. It's very hard to put. I don't think people should be forced to do things with their body, their personal body, because people get a virus or something.
Okay, so obviously you brought up the COVID and vaccine topic. You touched on that. So let's get a little deeper into that. So when it comes to the vaccines, you said it should be optional, not enforced. So what about the private companies enforcing them? So you don't think it should be government enforced, but do you think private companies have the right to enforce it on their employees? Because you choose where you work in the United States.
I definitely think there should be things. I definitely think that companies do have their own right to do it.
Okay.
But at the same time, I don't think it's morally right, because a lot of private, say like you work at a tech company,
Mm-hmm.
and that tech company is privately owned by like, say, James, and
Yeah.
James is liberal, and James really believes in, like it doesn't matter what he believes in or what, if he's liberal, conservative.
Yeah.
But I definitely think like if James believes that the COVID vaccine works, I don't know if he should have the right to make everybody else believe what he believes and take the vaccine, because a lot of people like that don't believe in it may lose their jobs over not wanting to put their health at risk because they don't know the long-term effects of the COVID vaccine.
I mean, that's really well said. I think the only thing I could really say to that is, if it is a privately owned business, they can make their own rules when it comes to that privately owned business. And at least under OSHA, which is the regulatory for the businesses, it is covered from what I hear, and it's being enforced to any company with over 100 employees at a single location. So at least when it comes to the vaccines, that they are being pushed that way. Obviously, the conservative side of the United States is not obviously for that. So I guess I'll ask you more of a personal question. Will you take the vaccine if it becomes enforced to you? Or no comment? Do you not want to say it?
No, I'll comment on it.
Okay.
This might sound a little weird, but when this country was created, it was created to what, like, the point of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the unalienable
Rights.
Unalienable rights.
Yeah.
I can't talk today because I'm on the mic, but I definitely think that kind of goes against a lot of things that this country was made for, because it was made for people to feel like they could be who they wanted to be and do what they wanted to do with their bodies and their minds and who they actually were. And I mean, I know this sounds a little cheesy, but like, we live in a free country, so I don't think people should be forced to do things with their bodies. Like, it's okay for people to, like, if it's tested and it's known to work most of the time,
they can still choose to not take it because it's their
freedom.
freedom.
Because like with the flu shot, I don't have any problem with like schools making people get the flu shot because it might spread. But the flu shot has been tested over years and years, and they know exactly how that flu shot works. The coronavirus vaccine has only been out, like a year maybe?
It's not even been a year. It's
okay.
The first vaccine of COVID was taken December of 2020, so we're not even a full year in. We're about 10 months.
10 months in, I don't think people should be forced to take something that they don't know the long-term effects of.
Okay.
Like, most people, like vaping, most people don't know the long-term effects of vaping, but people will do it and anyway, or when people know the long-term effects of cigarettes and like kind of just like,
So, I guess like you were talking about, obviously your main point there is long-term effects. So like, how long does the COVID vaccine have to be out in order for you to say like it's safe? Like 5 years, 10 years, like what is the threshold there?
Ooh, I feel like it should be pretty long.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely think, my only thing is I think that a lot of vaccines that are out there have been under development for a really long time.
Yeah.
And then they've tested them for like 5 years, and then they were making them for 5 years, they tested them for 5 years, and then they released them to the public, and then they told them about it and all this. And like with the COVID vaccine, it was like they made it for a couple months, and they were like, here you go. It hasn't been out for 10 months yet, but we're going to force you to take it if you want to go to your job and get paid. And I just feel like that's personally just not cool.
I definitely think you have an argument there with the speed it was created, because it's the fastest vaccine ever developed, it's the fastest to be FDA approved, and it's the fastest to be enforced. So it's beaten all records, but I think that's more of a nod to our scientific technology and our advancement. But I definitely can see where the hesitation comes from, because it's like, just a year ago, a full 12 months ago, we didn't have a vaccine. And now we have a vaccine that almost 60% of Americans have taken. It's being fully enforced. That's a lot of changes that came, and it's FDA approved. So that's a lot of changes that's happened in a year.
But my biggest thing with the vaccine is it isn't even proven to work 100% of the time, and no vaccine is.
No vaccine is, yeah.
I know one thing that like makes me mad is you don't know this, but I've actually known people that have taken the vaccine and then gotten the virus and then died. Like family members on my other side of the family have like taken the vaccine and then like thought it was gonna work and then they died from it. So I think that's one of my big things personally is like the vaccine most of the time I don't even know if it works. So that's like
So I guess when it comes to that, because no vaccine is 100%. This vaccine, when it first came out, they said it was very close to 100%, but now it's like not close to.
Now it's like 25%.
I think like the numbers are being thrown around a lot. I don't want to misquote statistics, but it's like somewhere around the 50s or 60% that it's going to help you not get affected.
Can't you still spread the virus?
Yeah. That's the thing.
That's also
that's the thing about the vaccine.
One of the things is like
yes,
you're supposed to take it, but if it doesn't work out of one of those like whatever percent, I'm not sure, so I'm not gonna say anything. And then you still spread it. Is that even like a good vaccine if it don't work most of the time?
The thing about the vaccine, it's to help stop the spread or slow the spread. So like I don't think it'll fully eradicate COVID. I don't think anyone believes that anymore. Like we did believe that at the start, but obviously that's not the case. And it's more to slow the spread of the virus. So with taking the vaccine, we will slow the spread, hopefully, and the less it spreads, the less it'll be much of a thing anymore, and we can finally get out of the pandemic. So I guess to go back to the question, if the vaccine is enforced to you, will you take it?
By what enforcement?
Well, I'm saying, okay, so the Pfizer.
Do you mean by job or by?
I'll get to that. So I'm saying about like, okay, the Pfizer just got approved today. I think it was today or yesterday for 5 and 11-year-olds. So that for 5 to 11-year-olds, meaning that anyone 5 and up can get the vaccine now. And it's really being enforced in a lot, I think, California schools and New York schools. So obviously you live in rural Texas. So that's probably the last place it'll be enforced at. But if it was enforced like for your school, would you take it?
Personally, I'm not advocating this in any form or any way, but I would probably not take it and find a way out of that.
So you would go homeschool, basically, at that point.
I would either make a fake card and figure out how to do that, or I would go homeschool because I would not put my body at risk over a vaccine that is only half proven or a quarter proven or... Unless I know the long-term effects of this and I know how it's going to affect my body, I don't think people should be forced to take in anything in their own body in general.
So I guess...
But, hold up.
Yes.
Before, I know I said that and that was very broad about making people
of course,
take things in their own body. But, like, that's to do with COVID because a lot of vaccines do work, like chickenpox or whatever.
This is a new vaccine, so you're saying it needs to be tested.
The vaccines that have been used like for hundreds of years, I think that's okay. But I don't think a vaccine that's been out for less than a year should make half the world take it because one man says, well, I think you should take that. Like,
so I guess when it comes to like the actual COVID disease, because we were talking about the vaccines a lot, have you had COVID?
I have never tested positive for COVID.
Okay.
But I have been around people with the coronavirus.
Okay.
I've been around like multiple people at once that had it and then found out and then felt sick and been sick but then gotten over it like a day or two later. So I cannot personally say I have tested positive and been sick, but I've been around plenty of people with the virus. I've been around people and hugged people. I've been around people and like had people kiss me on the cheek that had it and then been sick for a few days and like felt kind of like crappy and then been fine the next day. So I'm pretty sure I've been exposed to it several times and felt sick, but I cannot definitely say I tested positive for it and had it.
So I guess when getting to that, so you haven't had COVID, but I guess really when it comes to if you haven't had it before, so we don't really know how much of a threat it is to you, do you feel like COVID is a threat to you personally? Like a high threat to you where if you get it, you could die, and like, are you scared of it? Are you fearful of it?
I'm not fearful of it, but I am also not very opening to it, as I don't think anybody should be.
Mm-hmm.
I personally have asthma, and disclaimer, nobody should smoke, but I am a smoker, so I definitely think that affects my lungs.
Yep.
And coming from a person with asthma, I already shouldn't be doing that. So I definitely think would be more vulnerable to me than a person with a stronger immune system.
But you're not scared of it.
But I'm definitely not scared of it. I definitely think people are overreacting.
Okay, so that gets into like the COVID overreacting.
They're more treating it like it's like
the Black Plague.
I was gonna say like the Black Plague or like chicken pox back in like the 1800s or something.
Yeah, so I guess when it comes to like treating it like a very deadly disease, so the statistic with COVID is that it has about a 1 to 2% death rate when you get it. And the majority of the people who die are people that are much older and also the people who have underlying health conditions.
Yeah.
The majority are older. So when it comes to this like 1 to 2% death rate, since you are a young, healthy male, you know, for the most part, you know, when you look at COVID, it shouldn't be as, I guess, deadly to you, or it should be looked at as like, oh, it has a 1 to 2% death rate. In reality, it doesn't have even anywhere close to that with the death rate, so that's really why you're not scared and you don't treat it like the Black Plague, for instance.
Yeah, I definitely think it's been overreacted.
Yeah.
Like, even in one of my classes today at school, I'm still in school, I'm a junior, I was looking at a newspaper, and it was talking about, like, how many deaths and how many, like, like, how many deaths from COVID and how many people had COVID and how many people died from it. And I was looking at it and I was like, dang, there is not a lot of people, like, there's a bunch of people getting it, but there's, like, no one dying from it. And it was, like, in our, like, just our county, there was, like, it was, like, 3,000 people got it or something. And then it was, like, 5 or 6 people that died from it. And it was, like, so you're telling me out of thousands of people that got this disease, you guys are acting like it's a deadly, it's gonna kill you 100% of the chance, like over like a measly 3% or negative or whatever.
Okay, so obviously COVID to you, you're not scared of it, it's not that big of a deal to you. I guess I wanted to lead into this topic too. So do you think that COVID is over pushed in the media? Do you feel that way? I mean, obviously you just were talking about that. You saw a newspaper that like it was in there, but like the numbers didn't seem that bad to you. But like at least when you turn on like CNN or whatever, COVID is the number one topic. So do you think it's like over politicized in that way?
I think we could go on an entire podcast about news stations and being biased.
Definitely could.
Because like me and you earlier, like yesterday or something, we were talking about how news stations were biased in certain things, either being conservative or liberal.
Yep.
And that would change the way they talked about certain things. And I also feel like a big one for libertarians, right? When you call them libertarians? Or?
Well, libertarians, like what do you mean in what way? Like could you
like isn't a liberal a libertarian? Or...
Well, you could be a liberal authoritarian or a liberal libertarian.
Okay,
so yeah,
okay, that's what I thought.
I'm more of a liberal libertarian, so I'm a lib left. But yeah, I mean, it really just comes down to like what were you trying to get to with that?
Oh, okay. So long story short, like liberal news stations.
Yeah.
I feel like they're kind of making a big deal out of it to go along with certain sides of like the media, because like CNN is a big one on COVID.
Yeah.
Like it's like in your face, like if you get COVID, you're gonna die or something. And it's like it really makes it a bigger deal than it should be, and I feel like that's a big one that like kind of like I don't know, it kind of pisses me off personally
Mm-hmm.
because they kind of overdo very serious subjects and they get people that can't understand the subject totally
Mm-hmm.
or that people that don't look into it, they kind of make it worse than it is. And then it kind of like, it freaks people out and then people talk about it and then it gets people, it like spreads drama and spreads negativity and spreads violence throughout our communities and people like don't even know what's going on and like just over a news station just trying to get views.
So we talked about Joe Biden. We talked about COVID, the vaccines. I think that the vaccines should be pushed at least within companies. I don't think that it should be government enforced, but I think the private companies do have the right to push it, and I agree with most liberals on that I've talked to that it's totally reasonable. So I guess what other questions do you have for me as a liberal, and maybe we can try to come to an agreement there. We don't agree on the COVID vaccine and it being pushed like that, and we obviously don't agree on Joe Biden, but like, do you have any other questions?
I'm trying to think. What is your opinion on sorry I'm saying a lot, but what is your opinion on like news stations being biased because of like not just like liberals like Fox is conservative and CNN is liberal.
Yeah.
So like do you think, like I said, like we were talking a few days earlier, how I was like I feel like news stations are very biased nowadays and I feel like wasn't news like in the beginning made to just share news without without any bias at all, like a reporter.
So I guess when it comes to my opinion on that is I definitely do agree that most of mainstream media tends to lean left. That's pretty obvious when it comes to news stations, because when you think about like every single news station, most of them lean left, except Fox. That obviously is hardcore like Republican. But like I can see where you're coming from with them leaning to the left. That's, I guess, the more popular opinion in America nowadays, at least with the younger generation, because older people tend to be conservative, younger people tend to be liberal. So I think that the news stations are really just kind of going with that to gain that new audience, because they know if they lean left, they will gain a bigger audience. Because if you look at Fox, since they're the only news station that is primarily Republican, they have a giant fan base, but they're really the only one. But when it comes to all the other news stations, they still have comparable fan bases, but obviously they tend to lean left. But they're, at least in other news platforms, like for instance YouTube and like Facebook for instance, those do lean conservative, at least in my opinion. There are a bigger conservative base on YouTube and Facebook than there is a liberal base. That obviously is changing. I recently saw a video on YouTube that was talking about the rise of liberals on YouTube, but at least for other platforms that are relatively massive in size, that sometimes get even more views than news stations, that they do have a bigger conservative base on them. So I would say it's more 50-50. But if you're just looking at mainstream media, then yeah, there definitely is a lean to the left there. I would agree.
Yeah. Is there any other topics you would like to talk about?
Yeah, so I guess for other topics we are talking about, I think a big one that conservatives and liberals really disagree on is climate change and the environment. So when it comes to climate change and the environment, like what is your overall take on that?
Personally, I don't think that. I think it doesn't matter too much. I don't really know how to put it exactly.
You think it's overpushed by the media?
I definitely think it's a very serious topic, but I don't think it's gonna affect me in my lifetime. So I don't really know if that biases me a lot because it happens over hundreds of years.
Yeah. So when it comes to that, like it won't affect you in your lifetime. It won't probably affect me in my lifetime, but shouldn't we as humans, do we have the moral obligation living on this planet to preserve it for the future generations?
I definitely think we do. But I definitely think that no matter what we do to try to change it right now, I think we've gone too far already for it to make a change, if that makes sense.
So are you just saying, like, we should just screw it and just, like, not care about it because we've gone too far? Or should we take necessary steps to repairing it?
I think we should just take necessary steps to try to change it now, but also prepare for, like, what happens if we have a major flood and it floods half the earth, or like something catastrophic,
or ice age or whatever.
Yeah.
So I guess when it comes to taking the necessary steps to actually improving the environment and actually, stopping our carbon emissions and all that, there's the push for electric cars. There's the push for green energy. Like, what is your overall take on those things?
Well, personally, coming from a conservative white country male, I don't think that electric cars should be as big of a thing as...
You don't think they're the future? I mean, as a liberal, I definitely do think they're the future.
I definitely think that they could be a thing in the future, but I definitely think that we shouldn't ban people that want normal cars, because a lot of people find joy in cars, and a lot of people, they make their living off of non-electric cars, and like, a lot of people have fun. Like, a lot of people, their hobby is not electric cars. A lot of people like building cars. Me personally, like building trucks. I want to learn about, like, rebuilding engines and all that. And a lot of people, like, that would ruin the economy if we just got rid of normal cars. Because people over hundreds of years have made cars, gas, diesel, EcoBoost and all that kind of things. Like, they've made them, and I feel like it would be kind of just flushing everything down the drain if one man made an electric car and they were like, well, this is good for the economy enough that we're going to get rid of everything else and ban gas and diesel vehicles.
Well, I guess when it comes to that, like, you talked about, like, it's people's hobby, and I guess it's part of their culture in a way, like being, like, country and, like, liking non-electric cars, like, that's just a part of the culture. But don't you think that it's a necessary thing to change, because that even though it might be less interesting and it might, affect the culture of these country people, but don't you think that, like, it's actually a beneficiary to the environment?
To do with the environment personally, a lot of those things is, like, a lot of those companies and those, like, places where those electric cars are made, and a lot of the way those electric cars are, like the, I don't know how to put this, it's gonna end up making emissions and, like, fossil fuels and things that are bad for the environment anyway. And I've also seen, and, like, I did a little bit of research on it because I was like, oh, is that true? It was like those batteries in those cars are way, way worse than any engine or anything that was ever put for our environment into those cars. Like, those batteries last for, like, hundreds of years, like thousands of years or something. They said they were going to last. Yeah. And they were, like, piling them up in, like, third world countries and, like, killing people. And it was like, dang, like...
Yeah. So I guess, like, that's a good point there for electric cars versus non-electric cars. So I guess when it comes to, like, renewable energy sources or green energy, like, obviously we burn, like, fossil fuels and coal for primary energy source. What do you think is the energy source of the future? Do you think it's more renewable energy sources like wind and solar, or do you think it's more or so like nuclear, which I think a lot of liberals haven't really got behind? I'm more a part of, like, the green energy, but I'm also a fan of nuclear as well. So, like, what is your take there? Because we can't burn coal and fossil fuel forever. Like, it will run out eventually.
Yeah. I don't know. I definitely think we should find a different way to fuel our vehicles other than gas and oil. But
well, that's where electric comes in, because
yeah,
we will run out of gas.
I think we should find something else to make them fuel and make them work.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely don't think we should get rid of them as a whole. But like I said before, electric cars are made up to be like such healthy things, and it's like I don't think people get that, like, they don't just appear out of thin air and then work off of electricity. Like, it takes a lot of fossil fuels and it takes a lot of carbon emissions to get that electric car. So yes, you may have one electric car, but all of the things that made that electric car get there are way worse and are going to have a lasting thing, or, excuse my sickness here, it's kind of getting a hold of me, that will have like a lasting effect on the environment just by making that car. And it is the same with gas vehicles, but at the same time, if we're so worried about the environment here, we should have a different way of making those cars and a different way of disposing or of those batteries, or even different batteries, so that it's less harmful for the environment.
Yeah, so we, as like in the United States and obviously like countries in Europe, we are, cutting down on our carbon emissions. We're trying to push for more green energy, renewable energy. We're trying to decrease our carbon emissions, which is going well, but there are other countries like China, for instance, that aren't doing that, and they are choosing more economic opportunity and economic growth over preserving the environment. So like, what is really your take there on that? Because I think we're doing the right thing by kind of taking the back seat and letting China get ahead of us when it comes to our like full market in the world, because I think we're doing the right thing when it comes to protecting the environment. But like, what's your take on there? Should we just abandon like our kind of environmental push and just fully kind of double down on economic growth?
I definitely think, personally, I think we're doing the right thing here in our country specifically, by not trying to just forget about the environment and just focusing on our economy, because eventually, like, it does affect, like, I know I talked about it wasn't going to be in my lifetime, but this, like, is, like, it personally affects your environment, like doing a bunch of economic growth and, like, spreading your continent and, like, all that kind of stuff. It really affects your, it really does affect your environment and the animals and, like, even
the natural resources you have later. Yeah.
And it affects everything around you, like, right when it, like, in the present, not hundreds of years from now. So I definitely think we're in the right by trying to take a step back and trying to find a way to
preserve it,
kind of preserve our future as a whole now, and not trying to get ahead in the environment.
So I guess when it comes to like the future, because like you said, it wouldn't really affect you in your lifetime, but you did say that that it will affect the future. Like, as for the future and those generations, like, are you a person to have kids? Do you think that is in your future?
I don't know. Personally, excuse me again. Personally, I am still trying to figure that out. I'm not sure. This is like off subject, but I don't know. I've thought about it for a long time, and I'm at a young age and haven't really found anyone to settle down with yet. And, I do want a wife, but I think we're going to have to decide that together if we want kids or not, because I definitely think it's a big step in anyone's life. So,
well, I was kind of just asking that question because, like, when it comes to like the future environment within like the world or the United States or whatever, like when it comes to preserving the environment,
I think I know where you're coming at here.
Yeah,
I definitely think that if I have kids, I definitely think I'll have a different take on it, because I wanna preserve
their future,
an environment for my kids for the future.
Exactly.
But until then, I'm very unbiased on that because I really don't have kids, so I don't know what it's like to want to preserve the future for them. So I honestly can't speak on that topic, if that makes sense.
Okay. So, obviously, as a Gen Zer, which I am as well, we're called Zoomers.
Z-gang.
We grew up in the internet age. We grew up with social media. We don't know anything but the internet. And I guess when it comes to that, do you look at social media as a positive on our society or a negative on our society?
To be very blunt with it, I think of it as a positive and negative, which there's always positives and negatives of everything. But I personally think it is more of a negative than a positive in our society today, because a lot of people, even though they find like a place to fit in, and a lot of people found money, and a lot of people made their lives off of the internet, a lot of people and a lot of kids, it affects the way they are with other people, and it affects their personality, because a lot of people only focus on social media, that it kind of
changes them as a person, you would say?
Yeah, it kind of like changes the way they socially interact with other people.
So I guess when it comes to social media, I was leading into this topic about like radicalization. So when it comes to like social media, we've seen a lot of radicalization between many groups, and this radicalization really has happened on all sides, whether it comes to like alt-right or alt-left or crazy ideas, because the thing about social media is that you can find someone just as crazy as you online. And I've seen that on both sides. You know, I'm not saying that the conservatives are, you know, this is a fault of theirs or this is a fault of the liberals, but this is a fault on both sides that we've seen. And I guess when it comes to like the radicalization of people like on social media, like, do you see it as both sides too, or do you see it as one side is worse than the other? Like, what is your take on that?
Like one side is worse than the other on...
When it comes to like radicalization of the people on like polar opposite sides. So when it comes to like the alt-right or the alt-left, like where do you see that most? Like, do you see that with Antifa? Do you see that with like white supremacy groups? Like is it on both sides, or do you see it worse on one side?
Like on social media, do I find one's worse than the other?
Yes.
I think as I'm about to call out my own group here for this, but I definitely think we are very negative, like towards other people.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely, coming from a person that is from a conservative background, I've always tried to talk to people like liberal people, libertarians, liberal left or right. And I've always found that they're always usually a little bit more negative, like on especially the LGBTQ plus. There's no hate towards this community at all, but every single time I've tried to ask them questions, and I tell them like, oh, I don't support it, but what is this about? And like I try to ask questions, and as soon as I tell them I don't support it, but why do you think this? And like I try to ask questions and try to have a civil debate, and sometimes not even a debate, just learn about it. They always come in like hellfire missiles on me, like I'm a horrible person for not supporting it just right out of the bat. And I definitely think that's a big thing in today's society, is people always get like the opinion that like if you don't believe what they believe, you're automatically wrong, and you don't get your own opinion.
So I guess let's just kind of...
I'm sorry I didn't actually answer your question there.
Well, it's fine. Like, I get what you were saying about, like, the groups seem to be more closed off on social media.
I think most groups should just, like, not think they're better than other groups. I think groups should be more accepting and more, like, open and honest to figure out...
open to discussion, I think.
Yeah, open to, like, answer questions, and open to, like, be okay with people having a different opinion, and be okay with people not knowing about it and wanting to learn about it.
Yeah. So, like, let's cross over to the LGBTQ topic because you mentioned that. Yeah. Obviously, as a liberal, I support them all the way. And obviously, as a conservative, you probably don't. So, like, why don't you support the LGBTQ community? Is it your religion? Is it just being a conservative? Like, what is inherently wrong there?
I grew up Christian, so a lot of people are going to assume, or I grew up Baptist Christian personally, so a lot of people are like, well, he grew up Baptist, so he thinks all people that believe that are gay or whatever are going to burn in hell. And I don't think that's true at all. Okay. I think a lot of, like, this is out of topic real quick, but a lot of people that are Christian, if you're a real Christian, you believe in love and affect and kindness and all that. So a lot of people that are like, hate on the LGBTQ plus community and say they're Christian usually aren't actually Christian. They're fake Christians, so they give Christians a bad name. But off that topic, personally, I don't support it, and I always have. At first, I kind of was like, I just didn't believe it because of my religion. But the more and more that I that I explored it myself, I always found that, like, online, those people were always super negative and kind of, excuse my language, they were always kind of like dicks to other people for, like, not supporting them or trying to just figure out what they wanted to believe in. And their whole point was, well, we accept everybody even though blah, blah, blah. But then 90% of them were always being assholes just because you didn't support them and you were trying to explore and figure out what you actually, like, wanted to be gender-wise, sexual-wise, blah, blah, blah.
So, like, obviously, I think that you said you don't really support them is because they're very close-minded and don't want to have those conversations with you as a conservative. So, with the LGBTQ community, like, people within that community, not the community itself, but the people within it, you, like, talking to them or whatever, do you still respect them as individuals? Or
I do respect them as individuals, and I'm not saying all of them are bad as a community.
Yeah.
I have known several gay people. I'm, like, best friends with with gay people, and I've always found that they're awesome people, and like, one of my friends, her name's Erin, she's a badass, she's, like, a really good friend of mine, and I respect her even though she's gay, but and she supports gay people, but that doesn't really affect the way that I talk to her and all of that. So I definitely don't think all gay people are bad. I just think their community has become very toxic against people that don't always say they automatically support them. They're never open to questions like most people are, and they don't try to, like, see the other side of things sometimes, I guess.
Okay. I mean, that's definitely, you're a lot more open as a conservative, I guess, because I've talked to many conservatives before that really don't respect the LGBTQ community at all and don't respect the people within that community. And even as a religious person that you said yourself, you're able to respect those people within that community, and that in itself makes you, at least in my opinion, a lot better of a conservative than those other people that don't respect the people that just because they're gay or lesbian, that they're just subhuman or whatever.
Yeah, I grew up just, like, taught to respect everybody, even if it goes against my beliefs. Like, I was taught to respect people that were atheists, even though I'm Christian, and I was taught to respect this and that. But I think with the community itself, I think it's a lot more toxic than most communities, personally, against other communities in that same area.
All right. So, did you have any other topics for me?
This is very biased and it is very touchy. But what is your opinion on capital punishment, specifically either due to the death penalty and either put to death, life in prison, or mental home and trying to rehabilitate people?
Okay, I guess my opinion there would be I think the death penalty should be only used for extreme cases. So, for instance, if they're a serial murderer, well, it's probably good that they don't stick around here. But when it comes to like other crimes, like I don't think people should have the death penalty for like non-serious crimes like that. When it comes to like murder or rape, those are obviously serious crimes. But when it comes to other crimes, I think that there shouldn't be life in prison. There shouldn't be the death penalty. I think rehabilitation should be looked at as something more in the United States. I know it's not. I think it's not even given any. It's not given any mind when it comes to like in the justice system whatsoever. I think it's just we're so hyper focused in the United States of just like, oh well, this person stole something or armed robbery or whatever, and they might have not hurt anyone, but we're just going to put them in jail for 10 to 15 years and say like, oh well, that's the right thing to do. We got justice, but we're not fixing that person. We're really just breaking them more by putting them in jail, which it's not a place where you get fixed. It's a place where you just become more broken. And a lot of people in the United States are repeat offenders. So if they offend once and they get out of jail, they'll offend again and just go back because it's the only place they know. And I feel that should be looked at when it comes to rehabilitation with crimes like that.
Yeah, I definitely think you are very right. And I was going to bring that up too on how people, um, they don't really give too much mind on just smacking them in prison and saying that that fixes them. Because I feel like prison is like actually the worst place to rehabilitate someone.
Mm.
It's filled with the same people that did the same things. And you know how like you always tell someone that like if they're an alcoholic, like don't go to the bar? Like that's the same case. You're literally telling an alcoholic to go to a bar and have a beer with his buddies by sending someone to jail. You're just sending them around negative people that are going to do the same thing. But that doesn't really have to do with capital punishment. But my opinion on capital punishment is I think it should also be used in very extreme cases like rape or murder.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it should be very thought out over months on end and like very, very like point blank, if that person had to be the killer, they had to have like a witness, they had to know it was that specific person that did it, and not just not like it could be, but there's most evidence against him, so we're gonna do it anyway. I don't think that's you're killing an innocent person over it might be him.
Yeah. So I think that leads us into our last topic here. If you don't have any more, but I think this topic really fits with the capital punishment, and that's really your opinion on drugs. So when it comes to drugs in the United States, we obviously have the war on drugs, where it's like if you get caught with anything, whether it's weed, crack, coke, whatever, you're just going to jail, and you could go to jail for many years just for having a little bit of weed on you or cocaine on you or anything like that, just for personal use. And I think, most conservatives, they have very negative opinion on drugs. I have a very freedom-esque opinion where it's like, you live in the United States. I think you can have the freedom to do whatever type of drug you want within the comfort of your own home, within reason, of course. But I think that, if you want to smoke weed at your house, that's completely fine. I don't think that, you carrying it around for personal use is wrong in any way. And I feel the same thing with drugs like cocaine. If you want to do that at your house, I think that you have the right to. Now, this is very libertarian of me. I think that's where my libertarian really shows when it comes to, in my political sense. But like, what is your opinion as a conservative? Because conservatives, obviously you're religious, you have very negative opinions on drugs. So like, what is your opinions on drugs in the United States and like personal use in those cases?
I definitely think I have a very like personal thing to do with drugs in the United States. Because personal story real quick. My brother was caught with like a small bag of cocaine on his motorcycle one time.
Mm-hmm.
And then he got before he passed away, he got sent to jail for almost an entire year.
I think it was like 9 or 10 months, right?
Yeah, it was I think it was about 10 or 11 months for having a small or no, it wasn't on his motorcycle. It was on the bed of a truck on the side of the road.
Mm-hmm.
He had a small bag. He had like one line of cocaine, and he like he did it as the cop was driving by, so the cop saw him, and he had a small bag of cocaine, and he went to jail for almost a year for a small bag of cocaine that, like, he was never gonna sell. He was never a seller, and he like only did it a few times, and that took an entire year of his life before he passed away. So I definitely think it should be a lot less, but I think for personal use, I think it should be used on your own property,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think it should be hardcore drugs like crack or meth or anything like, even like, I don't even know about coke. I think coke is very strong, so if it can kill you, I definitely don't know about that.
So we agree on the weed.
On weed, I definitely think you should be able to carry it in your own personal area and your own personal consumption use. But I think there should be certain areas where you can do it, because I've been to states like Colorado, and like you'll literally be walking around and there could be a 5-year-old next to you, and there'll be a dude standing on the street corner smoking dope and getting weed near this kid, and I just think that's morally wrong to have drugs around family members, like public family members of any ages, like babies and infants and toddlers, and I just think that's wrong. So I definitely think with drugs in the United States of America, specifically Texas, because that's where we live, I think that it should be more open and honest with like weed, but only weed. And I definitely think there should be certain areas where you should be able to smoke it in public places.
Yeah.
And like you should be able to buy certain amounts from certain places, and I think it should be more regulated, and it shouldn't be as strong as it is in some places. I guess, if that makes sense.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's definitely some common ground we at least got to as a liberal and a conservative, is that we agree on the, personal use of weed, that it should be a something that if you want to do, you can do it in the United States, and we definitely found some common ground there. And so, do you have anything else to add?
And one thing I need to say about weed is, personally, from my experience in the United States of America, in the state of Texas, 90% of people do it illegally. Only weed. I feel like 90% of people do it illegally, so I definitely don't see the point in making it illegal. I think you should make it legal just because of the fact that people are going to do it anyway, and it's super popular. So why would you?
And it's not bad. That's the important thing. It's not bad.
It's bad for your lungs, but it's the same as cigarettes. It's not gonna.
It's less worse than cigarettes, because cigarettes,
it'll kill you over time.
That causes a lot of damage to you. But weed,
that's a topic for another day.
Exactly, that's another topic for the other day.
You shouldn't be able. It's like alcohol. It's legal, but you shouldn't be able to drive with it. Yeah. And some people, yes, you can drive high, but it definitely slows your senses, like alcohol. It should. I feel like it should be under the same
regulations as alcohol.
Somewhat, percent wise.
Exactly.
I don't know about percent wise, but shouldn't DUIs. I think you shouldn't drive high. Yeah. I think you should be able to buy a certain amount after a certain time. Yeah. And I think it should be more regulated than in like Colorado and Oklahoma and places like that. Yeah. But I don't think there's any reason for it to not be illegal or not be legal. And I definitely think it should be for more uses than just medical, in my opinion. Yeah. Because a lot of people just do it to do it. And they're going to do it if it's legal or not. So there's no point in arresting people over something that 90% of the people do.
So I think we found some common ground there when it at least comes to drugs in America, and at least weed, for instance. So I think that was my last topic. Do you have any more topics for me as a liberal, or do you think you want to leave it at that?
No, I think we're pretty good, man.
Okay, well, I just wanted to say it was a great conversation with a conservative. I think me, as well as all the viewers of the podcast, maybe got some insight to what the conservatives or a young conservative believes in the United States. And I think I'll give you this time to really say any final words you might have with your conservative beliefs and like maybe why people should be more conservative. So yeah.
I just want to say that I don't know everything, and nobody knows everything, and I am very young, so I have opinions of a young person growing up in the society. So I'm not a 40-year-old man that has gone through experiences of my entire life with all of this knowledge. I'm only 17 years old, and I believe what I believe, and I'm not going to make you try to believe what I believe. I'm not going to force mine on you. Don't try to force yours on me. I just believe that everybody should have their own opinions, even if it
goes against your beliefs.
Yeah, even if it goes against like what you believe in, I think I think if it goes against what others believe in, I think you should believe what you believe anyway. Like if you're hanging out with your friends and all five of them are like, let's go take shots, and you're like, I don't want to take shots because I think that's morally wrong, or I don't think that's good. Like, don't go do it anyway. So I think that's how you should be in your political party. You shouldn't just believe something because that's what you're told to believe. But like I said, I try to stay unbiased in certain things. I try to just speak what I personally believe. And like I said before, I can't say this enough. I'm very young, and I believe what I believe. So.
And those can change over time.
And they change over time, yeah. So, but I was very nice talking to you, man. I'm glad we had this conversation.
Yeah, I hope that, we got, maybe some liberal points in, maybe some conservative points in, and I don't know what people will more agree with, but hopefully we on this podcast were able to shed some light on the conservative side, because obviously as the host of this podcast, I'm a liberal, so, when I report news or certain topics, they're going to more lean left, and that could be like on a subconscious level where I might not pick up on, but obviously there is another side, so that's why I think doing, this episode 3, with talking with a conservative, maybe help shed some light on how conservatives feel on those hot button topics that we talked about. So yeah, this was the All in All Podcast episode 3, everyone. I hope everyone enjoyed listening, and as always, see ya.